Now let's hear viewpoints from both sides of the aisle. We welcome Austin Barbour and Brandon Jones to our MPB studios. Austin is a Republican strategist and founder of the Clearwater Group. Brandon is an attorney and a former Democratic member of the Mississippi House. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Thank you.
Glad to be here again. Austin, you've got some news for us on a ballot initiative, that bill that might be coming out of the House next week. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Price Wallace, who is the chairman of the Constitution Committee, had some conversations with him over the past week. Looks like he's going to move a bill. I think it's a really good bill that he'll move out of committee, or at least bring it up in committee and see what the will of the committee is on Monday. Price has worked hard on this bill. This has been a priority for the speaker to pass ballot initiative language that would obviously allow Mississippi registered voters to put an issue on the ballot that they find is important. We've had that issue in the past with voter ID, eminent domain, medical cannabis program, and so I think it's a fair bill from what I understand. We'll see what happens. And what do I mean by a fair bill? It's not a crazy number of voters signatures that would be required to put something on the ballot. That's always sort of the step one. You can't say, sure, you can put an issue on the ballot, but we need 1 million signatures. Now, wait a minute, how are we supposed to do that? That's always sort of one of the big thresholds. But I look forward to the debate, look forward to seeing what happens, and just really appreciate the speaker and Price Wallace's leadership on this, which is an issue that matters to a lot of folks across Mississippi.
Well, this is exciting. We're breaking news on that issue. That's good.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to reviewing it. This is long overdue. A fair ballot initiative is long overdue. As listeners will recall, it's been a few years now since the Supreme Court took it away. They had no business doing that. It was a bad piece of Supreme Court work. They did it over a technicality that they could have easily corrected without putting us in this fix. Now it's set us back to the point where, in order to restore the ballot initiative, we must pass a constitutional amendment, which I'm sure is why it's coming through the Constitutional Committee. And that's a more strenuous standard to pass a constitutional amendment. So it's unfortunate we're in this fix, but here we are. I'm looking forward to looking at it.
Yeah, and I think this bill would be statute only. So if you wanted to put something on statewide ballot to make everybody have to wear Ole Miss Rebel sweatshirts, which I don't think that would pass, but it would get a good percentage of the vote. That would be statute only. So we wouldn't be amending the Constitution as it has been in the past. And I think that's fine. I think that's a good thing.
Let's move on to presumptive eligibility with Medicaid and pregnant women. Brandon, what happened with this, and do you think they did the proper thing by trying to fix it in this session?
Well, no question they did the right thing this week. This stems from a bill that was passed last year. It has to do with presumptive eligibility for pregnant women who are seeking doctor services, who are seeking medical care. We passed a law last year where we added some Mississippi stuff to it about women having to confirm their employment status with documentation, and that didn't pass federal muster. And so we've had to go back to the drawing board. This is not an uncommon scenario for Mississippi legislature to find itself in. What this bill did that they passed this week, it brings Mississippi law into compliance with the federal regs, makes it easier for low-income women to see a doctor sooner. That's really what it boils down to, when they are expecting. You know, for a state that struggles with infant mortality, for a state that's really had issues in this space, this is good. It doesn't change anything about the money. It doesn't change anything about who is or who isn't covered. This has always been about Medicaid-eligible mothers. And credit to Chairman of Medicaid in the House, Missy McGee from Lamar and Forest County. She's been working on these issues. She was a part of, postpartum care coverage last year. She's really looked out for health care for moms in Mississippi. That's a big deal. So credit to the House, and I think it passed unanimously. So hopefully the Senate will take it.
Yeah, that's great. And Missy is a smart member. She works hard. She's a really good chairperson for Medicaid in the House. And listen, as a fiscal conservative like I am, who cares about folks who need a little bit of help, I think this is a good thing, because what are you going to do? You're going to help these, as you said, women who are Medicaid eligible, make sure they're getting the proper care. Okay, make sure that baby that hadn't been born yet is getting the right kind of care. So when that baby is born, the baby's healthy. Okay, that's important not only for that baby, but that's important in a whole bunch of other ways. Look, there are going to be a lot of healthcare related issues that are going to involve insurance companies and doctors and patients. There are a lot of questions about insurance companies and their practices of getting in between the doctor and a patient, and the decisions that they make on serious illnesses. And I think we'll see a lot of issues pop up in the legislative session this year about that. That'll be fascinating to watch the debate. It's fascinating as the Mississippi legislature can get, Brandon.
Yeah.
School choice. We talked about this a little last week. We'll talk about it more next week when Representative Rob Robertson is with us. He said earlier on this program that it won't be the Wild West, Austin, if we start letting people more freely switch districts. How can we be sure of that?
Well, let's give a little history lesson here. So last week we talked about Dennis DeBar, who's the chairman of the Education Committee in the Senate, and what I believe Dennis's recommendation is on this legislation. Again, bringing more competition, more choice to parents and students is to allow a child, if they want to transfer from school A to school B, no matter where those schools are located, that only school B that they were going to had to say, yeah, come on, we have a seat for you. School A didn't also have to agree to release that child. And, we did ask some questions about that. So what happens? Do you have the star quarterback? Do you have, the 4.0 likely valedictorian who are going to be recruited from school A to school B? It sounds like that's what Rob, of course, chairman of Education of the House, is talking about. How do we make sure that we think through these things? Because you don't want to rob one kid. We want competition. That's a good thing. We want choice for parents and for these students, but you want to put some guardrails in there. So and I'm sure that's what they're talking about. I can't wait to see what Rob has to say about that.
For advocates of our public school system, these are kind of these are perilous times, because there's been a lot of proposals that have flown around in these early days that could change the way that our public school system functions. The way that it currently works is that schools are allocated a certain amount of money based on the attendance of their school, and based on that decision, budgets are set, teachers are hired, the course for the next year is set for, based on those figures. And so what is important is that we don't do anything to so disrupt the way that works, that schools are left holding the bag, and that they aren't able to plan properly. They aren't able to move forward with regular, classroom stuff, and that their funding isn't shifted, mid-cycle, because the timing of all this is very important. There's a lot riding on how these schools function based on the timing of these things. So I guess what is encouraging to me is that the chairman is saying that there's going to be some care given to these decisions. And I think that's important. I mean, I just want to make sure that we're getting the maximum amount of resources to our public schools so they can be the best that they can be. And I don't want to destabilize them in any way as they're getting ready to welcome students into the door.
Yeah, and what I want to see is what we have seen over really the past decade is Mississippi, the public education in Mississippi continue to do better and better. Our teachers continue to get paid more. They still need to get paid even more. Our test scores have gone up in a tremendous way, and our kids are better prepared for college or for a trade or just for life, and that's been under the leadership of Tate Reeves and Delbert Hoseman and Jason White and Philip Gunn and these chairmen that we've talked about in a bipartisan way. That's what I want to see happen, and I'm excited that Senator DeBar and Representative Robertson are leading that conversation. And you're right, you got to do it in the right way. You do. I want competition. I do. I want parents and kids to have options, but you got to make sure that you're not handcuffing administrators who are like, well, wait a minute, I just hired this new science teacher. Now I don't have enough kids in a room. That can be done. That balance can be struck, I'm confident.
Can you have it all, though? Can you have more options and still police the system enough to where you don't have any abuse of it and have enough funding to make all these things happen?
Well, we don't have to dive straight in off the high dive into this to figure that out. We can, we can put a foot in the water and test that out and see if you can do that. But we certainly should try to obtain that level of greatness and that level of freedom and opportunity and choice for our students and our kids and our parents. Excuse me.
You know, Wilson, it's not the scariest thing that's been proposed this year facing public schools.
We'll get to that.
We're at a stage where we kind of have to pick what we're going to have panic attacks about at this stage, and so, you know, it's going to be a conversation that evolves, and at this point, you don't want to get too worked up about something you haven't seen
You
yet.
don't seem panicked at all.
That's the way I feel.
Yeah.
You don't get too worked up before you see the product.
Well, you said scary, but we do have a couple of unusual bills that came up this week. One would establish a bounty hunter program to help deport illegal immigrants. Another is called the Contraception Begins at Erection Act. Google it if you want the details.
I don't want the details.
Well, I mean, are these realistic? Are they just trying to make a point? Are these potentially future laws?
No, none of these bills are going anywhere. And I have no idea if they're real or if they're a game or what they are. I'd rather leave our federal immigration issues our immigration issues and deportation issues to the federal government.
So I've received assurances from key chairmen that the bounty hunter bill is not going anywhere.
Okay.
But here's why I think it warrants some attention. This was proposed by a statewide elected official from one of our largest and most growing countywide elected official in one of our largest counties in the state, DeSoto County District Attorney. That's the person who put this up. So the idea that the head law enforcement officer in DeSoto County would propose this as a good idea raises serious questions about that person's reasonableness and whether or not they need to be in a job of such importance. They are the people who decide who goes to jail in many respects in that community and who's detained and make suggestions for how long. So I think if you're listening to this and you're in DeSoto County and you've got a law degree or you've ever just walked by the courthouse, run for DA, because that guy does not need to be in public office. Look, Representative Blackman's bill about his bill, I think, was to draw a point. Look, in Mississippi, there is and we've talked about it on this program in years past, there's an annual process where we talk about conception and we date it back as far as possible. You know, we've had that conversation. We've had bill after bill after bill. I think Senator Joey Fillingame has filed 30 of them over the years. I mean, so this is an annual process. His point was to say there is a certain silliness that we're involved in. You've passed some of the most restrictive abortion laws in the entire country. You keep outdoing yourself. You're in a race to the bottom with other states that are just trying to see how restrictive they can make it. And so I think his point was to say, this is kind of a joke. I mean, we do this every year. You're trying to see how restrictive you can be. And so he came up with one, in his words, it kind of put some of the impetus on men to be thoughtful about this stuff. I think our post-diet environment is a very scary one for women seeking health care, seeking to have relationships with their doctor, and seeking to have the fullest array of medical options on the table for them. And I think his purpose was to highlight we just continue to be extremist in this state. And, I think that's what it was for, was to get attention to the issue.
Well, you mentioned Joey Fillingame. I would say Joey Fillingame's efforts were very serious, that he was looking to do everything he can to protect life. And he obviously has a different opinion than others on what that definition should be. But Joey was very sincere. I appreciate what he did. I'm very pro-life, and those were obviously much different than whatever this bill was.
We had a new president inaugurated this week. Austin, what does it mean for Mississippi?
For Mississippi, I think it means a lot. I think for America it means a lot, but you asked specifically about Mississippi, which is what matters the most. What does it mean? Well, first of all, it's a guy who will be friendly to Mississippi, who will be friendly to our leaders, who will be friendly to Mississippians, who received an overwhelming amount of support here. But I think most importantly, it means that we've got somebody in office who is going to focus on issues that I'm confident will help Mississippi create jobs, create a better economy, get us out of the inflation issues that we have, secure our border, these issues that matter to many voters, both black and white in Mississippi, both rich and poor. He's someone I believe will bring more stability to the country, and for those Mississippians who are doing us proud and serving in our military, and will give them more confidence about the person who's making the decision about, hey, whether they're going into battle or not. So, I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump does, but I do believe in his ability to fix our economy, to strengthen the border, and to bring more security around the world. That's how I see it.
Brandon?
Yeah, I think President Trump is a narcissist who is primarily concerned with himself and whose every political and public move has been in service to his own ego. I don't think it's good for our country. I don't think it's good for our state. I think it's scary for issues on an international level. He drove our economy as close to the dirt as it could possibly be driven during his first term. So I don't know why we would be optimistic that he will do something different this time around. We have 20 people being detained in Madison County today, dads who were doing jobs that, frankly, many Mississippians don't want to do because of this president's xenophobia and saber rattling over the immigration issue, which is a serious one, but which his answer to at every turn has been, to demonize people and to vilify human beings. So we've pulled out of the World Health Organization. We've made some weird statements about what, water treatment is going to look like and whether or not we can use fluoride anymore in it. There's hardly any place where you look, any part of public policy that affects people's lives that are not going to be impacted by the ravings of someone who I don't know is of sound mind, but even if he is not concerned, has never demonstrated a concern for anyone outside of himself. So here's what I hope. I hope he's a lot better than I think he is. And I hope that we perform a lot better than I think we will. But if I'm being honest, sitting here right now, there's a lot of reason to be concerned. And there's all those indicators that Austin just mentioned, we didn't see improvement in any of those ways during the time when he was in office. We saw a lot of chaos. We saw a lot of strange stop and go. Most every policy promise remained unfulfilled at the end of his time. He promised us health care. Sweeping policy changes never happened. He talked about infrastructure more than any president probably ever has since FDR and passed nothing. All of those things happened in his aftermath. So, look, you want to give people an opportunity to perform. I'm not doing that here with him, but I care about the country, and I care about the country having access to health care, the country being a stable on the world stage. So I'm hoping that good things happen and that progress happens. But I think if it does, Austin, if I'm being honest, it'll be despite him, not because of him.
Yeah, I just know he has got such a massive improvement for the last 4 years. From the border to inflation to essentially America wondering, is the president there with all his faculties and the ability to make tough decisions? And I hate to say that about someone, but look, Brandon's my friend. We're going to disagree on this. That doesn't mean we can't be friends and have a civil conversation about this and disagree about policy. But I know what he wants is what I want, is that for our country to be successful, for our state to be successful, and try to do it in a bipartisan way if possible. I want to try to
get the campaign's over. I mean, that's what I would say to people who feel the way I do. Right. I mean, one thing that
American voters spoke.
Yeah, and look, one of the residue of the Trump era is that last time around, Republicans overreacted and, frankly, to the detriment of our country, tried to litigate the election because Donald Trump wanted them to for much longer than should have been done. My suggestion to progressives is the race is over. We're not fighting who won the election. The time now is to drill down and to try to be, paying attention to those policy matters that we still have some effect over. I will also say this. You didn't ask, Wilson, but just the public health, mental health word of the day or thought of the day. Don't go after shiny objects. Don't chase everything this person says. Don't get caught up in the chaos of the day. Try to not allow your headspace to be dominated by a person who says crazy things. Focus on things that actually matter. Focus on policy. Focus on things that actually will change people's lives. Don't get caught up in who's in a fight today, who's yelling at who today, who's getting vilified today, what's the group that we're poking fun at today. Focus on things that are substantive in policy, and to the extent that you can impact those, drill in there.
Between now and our next visit, gentlemen, the Governor Tate Reeves, will be delivering his State of the State address. That will be something that we can talk about in depth next week, and we look forward to having you then. This has been At Issue, a weekly discussion about the 2025 Mississippi legislative session. You can hear At Issue every Friday night at 6:30 during the session on MPB Think Radio. You can also subscribe to our At Issue podcast, which features extended versions of our roundtable discussions and featured interviews. And if you'd really like to see what we all look like, catch video versions of our roundtable and interviews at mpbonline.org and on YouTube. At Issue is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting. I'm Wilson Stribling from all of us at MPB. Thanks for joining us.